All right, let's head to the trenches and talk about some offensive line and defensive line play.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. All right, Landon, like we talked about on yesterday's episode, spring practice is obviously in full swing, but they also did their first spring scrimmage. Jeff Lebby was then available for the media after that. That was on, I believe, Tuesday. And he talked about the offensive line and defensive line, something that we've kind of talked about, especially the defensive line. We did dive into the offensive line a little bit too. So he was asked about possibly getting offensive line in the transfer portal this spring. But overall, what has he thought about the job that group has done so far? He said, I think we're playing with great toughness and great physicality, but we're not playing very clean right now. Our effort, mindset, and mentality has been much improved and need that to continue throughout the spring. We've got to play cleaner, and we'll look to add that in the spring. So let's start with the offensive line right off the bat. We'll get into his quote about the defensive line, but hearing that, what is your first thoughts?
I'm both very excited and also very concerned.
Right.
Because you love to hear that your offensive line is being very physical, but the lack of, how did he put it? They're not playing clean. Yeah. That's very concerning. And I'm an offensive line nerd. I will watch guard tape on for fun. But to hear that, like, it's not clean, that's concerning, because if your technique is clean and you're in good position, you can overcome a lack of physicality. I mean, we see that a lot with players who are don't have the physical traits, don't have that mean streak that you hear about, but are very good technically. They can overcome that. When someone is just physical, that becomes concerning. It's usually great on run plays, doesn't always translate well to pass protection,
and translates usually into a lot of penalties.
Yes.
But no, you mentioned it. So what that tells me is their technique is not very good right now. And that worries you a little bit, because we talked about this offensive line, while they haven't played a lot together, have played a lot of football. And so for their technique not to be great, now you wonder, do they just have bad technique? Is it because these guys they're going, because we talked about a lot of these guys come from smaller schools. Is it because the guys they are going against are so much more talented that it's getting them off their technique and making them then grab or hold because they're getting beat? Maybe they're not athletic enough. There's not a lot of good when you read that comment. When you read that comment, it's a lot of bad.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes with technique, it can be a little thing. Maybe their set is just a little too wide. Hand placement isn't quite right. Mistiming the punch, different things like that. And that can lead, I mean, obviously it leads to penalties in games, but those are little things that you're glad you're seeing them now. And you do have time to go through it, improve. We both talked about how we both are fans of Phil Loadhold, both as a player and, what we saw him do at Colorado. So, hopefully they start working on that, but the fact that they're recognizing it, and hopefully it is just the small things, with people maybe leaning too far back, too far forward, maybe a little too wide, things like that are easily correctable, and not bad habits that are becoming worse because of the increased physicality they're facing.
Yeah, you mentioned it there. Usually the most common things you hear when it comes to not playing clean is you're too far forward, and that makes you easily to be knocked off balance or knocked down, or just, you're just not under control. The other one is pad level. Maybe you're a little too tall, and so the defense line is able to get up under you and move you wherever they want you to move, because like we talk about, and it's said a lot, low man wins when it comes to offensive line and defensive line play, especially. And if you're playing too high, you're not bending at your knees and really getting low, and having that arch back, you can get pushed around and blown off the ball.
And you have to make sure they're bending at the knees and not bending by leaning forward to try to get low, that they're getting low the correct way, because then you just get ripped and you're out of the play and very quickly, and your quarterback has been crushed.
Yeah, that's why I talked about leaning too forward. You usually see those intertwined. They're leaning too forward and they're a little too high.
It's very strange. Offensive line is so technical, and there's so many little things that lead to bad offensive line play, and hopefully they get them cleaned up.
Yeah. All right, so he was asked about the defensive line. We've talked about that too. It's a makeshift group, a whole new group, but they hope to have a lot of depth. We talked about that on yesterday's episode. Levy kind of talked about that, being able to rotate in a lot of bodies. He says we've got enough bodies to be able to practice like we need to enroll guys. We got through the first scrimmage, and there's this line where we have the ability to go play 2.5 to 3 deep at each position. Those guys that are on the line of the cutoff, they're going to play above the line. We got to get those guys ready to play and have an impact where we can roll 9 to 10 guys and do what we want to do on the defensive line. That's kind of like what we talked about yesterday. First off, you play 2 or 3 at every position. That's pretty good depth. Defensive tackle, you would like a little more depth than that. But he's saying that 9, 10 guys is what they want to rotate, and that would be big.
That'd be huge. And a lot of new guys too, looking at the depth chart that might change a lot. 2 starters are transfers. Backup is a transfer. Some third string, 2 fourth string listed right now. So there's a lot of new bodies in that room. And if you look at what else he said that we mentioned yesterday about only having the bodies to do 120 snaps in the scrimmage last year versus 160 this year, you needed those bodies. So even if they're not starting, those are crucial pieces to have, especially when, you're 8 games into the season and it's the fourth quarter. You're getting tired quick sometimes in that heat. And so you need those other guys coming in.
Yeah, and I don't just want to rehash everything we said yesterday, but we talked about how it's great if you have all these stars on the defensive line. Obviously, that's the goal. That's what you want. But if you don't have that, which I would say 99% of teams don't have that, you need to have guys that are about the same level that you can just rotate and there's not a drop-off. The issue you get, and the issue we saw last year with this team, is you had some good players, like average to good players, but there was no depth behind them. So if those guys came out, which on the defense line, you're going to come out. You can't play the whole game. You're going to come out. There was such a drop-off that you could really wear on them.
Yeah, and hopefully all these new bodies help that. I mean, and hopefully a lot of these new guys are, they hit the evaluations, and the ones coming from the lower levels are ready for this kind of competition and can hit the ground running. Because unlike the offensive line, he didn't get much into what's working versus what's not working for the defense. He just kind of said, defensive line, they're playing with good energy. We got a lot of them. That's really all we have to go on right now.
Well, and again, that was very similar, to what we were talking about yesterday, where is it because he's an offensive coach that we're hearing all this? That's what we don't know.
That's true. And hopefully it's because maybe they're playing well, but they're not doing anything spectacular. So there's like nothing, they're not doing anything newsworthy, but they're not getting blown off the ball. So there's nothing to like, I know he wouldn't trash his team at this point, but you know what I mean when I say like trash them. You're not going to talk negative about them when they're not doing anything wrong, but they're not doing anything great to where you can bring it up.
Yeah. One guy that I'm excited about, I'm just kind of going through their depth chart, but I was excited about this pickup was Red Hibbler from NC State. He only got to play in 3 games last year due to an injury, but in 2023, had 13 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 3 quarterbacks hits, 2 forced fumbles. That's a guy at defensive end that you're really excited about. Obviously, they bring back Kedrick Bingley Jones, but then, like you mentioned, Will Whitson is a transfer, and he's transferring in from Coastal Carolina, so that's a lower level, but he had pretty good production. 3.5 tackles for loss last year, 5.5 the year before, 5 sacks in the 2 years combined. And as a defensive tackle, you'll take that all day.
Yeah, and he was the guy who I was going to mention that I was excited about. So again, we don't talk about this beforehand.
Right.
But I think he could be a very interesting player, especially with those, he's getting the tackles and the tackles for loss, which you don't see a lot from that position, which means he's getting penetration, which, that's great. If you can get disruption right in the face of the quarterback, a lot of times that's more effective than getting it off the edge. So if you can get that coming from interior, that just means, that's one more piece that's in going in the right direction for this defense.
Yeah, for sure. And the funny thing is, if you look at their defense, it's littered with transfers and then freshmen. So
Which, after last year, that's good.
it is good. And it's not just the defensive line, it's the whole defense. And that's what you needed to see. So that's good to see. All right, well, coming up next, we got to go back into baseball. We've been very hard on Chris Lemonis and the baseball team, but there were some positives, I guess, you could take away from this last game. We'll get into that. That's coming up next. All right, well, life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day, so protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Well, baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to $1,000 extra to your cash, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. PrizePicks keeps every game exciting. This week, I'm probably going to pick Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run the way he's been playing, and Shohei Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base. It's that easy. Setting up a lineup takes less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. I always take advantage of Taco Tuesday, where PrizePicks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, we got to get into baseball. We've been very hard on Chris Lemonis. They had a midweek game against Memphis, who was 11-17. We said before the game and before this series this weekend against South Carolina, worst case scenario, you got to go 3-1 this week. Yes. Really, you need to go 4-0. It was looking dicey early in this one.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we might get easier on him later, but right now, it's not starting good. I mean, we've talked about how they play sloppy. There's a lot of mental errors, a lot of easy mistakes, and that's what this game was. They had 2 errors in the first inning, and that's how you fall behind 3-0 to a team that you're a lot better than. And I mean, when that happens, you got to think this. I mean, I thought the sky was falling. I mean, you look at how the last 3 weekends have gone, and then you play Memphis, and this is supposed to be the get right game. And then that is how it starts. It's like, okay. And, we didn't advocate for we're like, hey, maybe after the season, you look at moving on from Lemonis. So I was like, and if they lose this one, he might not make it to the weekend. But
it was looking that way. It was looking that way big time. Because again, Memphis is a losing record team, and I know anything can happen in baseball. I get that, but you can't lose this game. Like, you cannot lose this game. And when you go fall down 3-0, I believe you said third inning. Yeah, third inning. Mm-hmm. It's not looking good. And then you score 1, but you're still down 3-1 heading to the 6th. And then you're tied 3-3, thankfully, with the 6th. So heading to the 7th, you're tied with Memphis. And after all this criticism, and a lot of it is warranted, and the coaching was an issue early in this game. So that was also a big talking point, obviously, and again, warranted. I saw someone comment on one of the deals that it's more of the talent and not the coaching, and part of that is true. Yes. But also that goes to coaching because you're the one bringing the talent in. But the errors and stuff, okay, some of that is on the player. I'm not trying to excuse the player, but you're either allowing it or you're coaching it. It's one or the other.
And every player, there's a player at every level, a player will always make physical errors. It's impossible to be physically perfect all the time. you got to cut out the mental errors. And that's where coaching comes into play. And preparing your team for those situations is where coaching comes into play. It's a lot less than like in football. Oh, the coach called the wrong play for this situation. It's
right.
The coach did not prepare them for this week, either during offseason workouts or something.
Right.
But I mean, you can't open a game with 2 innings. And yes, talent is an issue when you're like, playing LSU or Texas and some of those teams. When you're playing Memphis, talent is not the issue.
Yeah. Well, it's looking like, okay, again, you talked about LSU, Oklahoma, Texas. Those 3 teams are around the top 10, maybe all in the top 10 at this point. But when you played them, they're all around the top 10. You lose those again, sucks. You had a good thing going at Mississippi State, and then you are at this point where you're 1-8. Sucks. But after losing those teams, how are you not ready mentally and on fire, ready to play Memphis? Knowing that you have to win this game. And that's got to be that's the most frustrating part is you just came off a series where, okay, that team is better than you, okay? But Memphis isn't. And you would think that these guys would be like, okay, this is our get right. We're going to go blast them, and then we're going to go have a great series against South Carolina. We're going to win that series, and now we're clicking. And they come out flat. That's on coaching too.
Yes, and it could all be they're playing tight because they see all the losses piling up. They feel they should be in the same tier as these teams that they've just been swept by, and they're not. So they're getting tight. And again, that's a little bit harder on a coach to loosen up a team. That's more on like the leadership of the players to find, loose. So we don't know if they're not focused or they're too locked in to the point that they're causing mental errors. I mean, the only person who seemed to be ready to go from the jump in this game, and that was Ryan McPherson, who had a rough outing when he pitched against LSU last weekend, but came in and retired 12 batters in a row after allowing one single. I mean, he kept him in the game. I mean, he didn't allow a run through those 4 innings, retired 12 straight batters. I mean, that was a clutch performance by him.
Yeah, and again, the 3 errors. And I was looking at the other day, the crazy thing about the pitching's been really pretty good this year.
Yeah. Especially Pico.
Yeah, especially Pico. But I saw some, I think they're like number 2. I should have fact checked this, but I believe they're like number 2 in strikeouts in the country.
They're up there.
But because of all the errors behind them, these games just get out of hand. We saw it in this, what was it, the second game against Oklahoma, where they have this, he pitched great, but the errors pile up. Mm-hmm. It's the undisciplined baseball that is so frustrating.
Right. And like I said, it's one thing if you got a guy who can't make a throw that he's trying to make and they give him an error, but these are just fielding. Like you're fielding your position. And there's and I've mentioned it before, it's one of the most misleading stats on this team. You look at the team ERA and it is so low. It is either like second or third in the conference. But then you look at how many errors they commit. That's why the team ERA is so low, because they allow multiple unearned runs a game. And that's what has to get better. And to some extent, it could be talent. It might be talent. But it's also coaching, because if these people can't do it, you're telling me you don't have another kid on the bench that wants to get out there? I mean,
well, that goes back to where you're either coaching it or you're allowing it at this point.
Yeah.
And I said 3 errors. I meant 3 earned runs. It was only 1 error. But still, I mean, it's just the errors are just piling up. It feels like every single game. And that's why they find themselves down early in the games, is they just don't seem mentally ready to play. And that's the most frustrating part about this team.
Yeah, it really is, because you see the flashes of a very good team, but they can't seem to be able to put it all together. On the days they score, 8 runs will be the day their pitching staff gives up 17. The day that they commit 1 error is the day that, the other team, they score 0. So the 1 run they allowed in was the winning run. It's just, it's really maddening to watch it, because it's whatever can go wrong will go wrong in the most annoying way possible.
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things that, and we talked about it earlier this year, we thought was going to be like an easy fix. And it just hasn't been. I was trying to look this up to see what they are. They're 133rd in the country in fielding percentage this year. That is so bad. And I know there's a ton of teams. I believe in the FBS, there's almost 300 teams. So I guess they're in the top half. But it's just that kind of stuff that is just so frustrating with this team.
It really is. And errors are sometimes hard to track because occasionally you'll get some home cooking on some errors that are, hits that are actually errors, stuff like that.
Right.
And errors are hard, and fielding stuff is hard to track at every level. But I mean, it's bad. I don't need,
Yeah.
and that's fundamentals. And
Right.
like they said at Angels in the Outfield, it's time to go back to fundamentals in the middle of the season.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about. And the stat I was thinking of was strikeouts per 9 innings. They're second in the country, 12.5 a game. 12.6 is Wake Forest. They're the leader. And so Mississippi State's right behind them. So the pitching staff is doing a great job, and they got to get some help. But
they got to strike them out, or because if it's put in play, they're probably getting on base.
Right. All right, well, coming up next, we got to talk about the transfer portal for basketball. What's going on? We'll talk about that coming up next.
Daylight savings snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late, watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Basketball madness, I've been staying up late watching all the tournament action, and 5-Hour Energy helps me keep up the next day. Extra daylight, extra activities. With longer days, I love getting outside for a hike, walking my dog, and Tropical Burst is my go-to for a quick boost. On-the-go convenience, whether I'm at a game or traveling, 5-Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12 or 24 pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jaron, that's Landon. Check us out on our social media right there. But Landon, we got to talk about the transfer portal. It's been very busy. We've been talking about it just about every day. But we had another entry, Riley Kugel, that he entered, that would have been Wednesday. Mm-hmm. That marks, I believe, 5 players now that are in the portal or were in the portal. Nwoko obviously has committed to LSU, so he's out of the portal technically. But Kanye Clary was the first one. Not a surprise at all. But they lose, obviously, Kugel, who was kind of a vital part off the bench for them and had a great last game of the season for him. In this era, nothing surprises me anymore. Yeah. But if there was something to surprise me, I was a little surprised to hear he entered the portal just because he probably had a chance to be a starter next year.
Yeah, and like I told you off air when we were talking a little bit, this one didn't really surprise me from him leaving thing. The timing is what's weird to me. If it had been, early in the portal when we saw Clary enter, then okay, yeah, he talked to someone who said, you go here, start, or hey, here's this. But to wait this long and then him leave, that's pretty interesting. You kind of wonder what happened. And at this rate, I mean, it's 6 players in the portal, and with those that graduated, that's what are we looking at? 65-70% of the team.
Yeah,
this last year is out the door.
And obviously Hubbard announced he's going to do the draft, but we'll probably be back, so you're probably safe there. But we've heard all during the season at the end that Mississippi State was going to be very active in the portal. Well, you're going to have to be now because you have 5 players that you're likely losing unless you can somehow reel one of them back in. So you better be active.
I mean, they're active right now. They're just active on the wrong end.
Yeah, you got to be active. And that's 5 players you're losing to the transfer portal. That didn't count any of the seniors.
Right.
I can't remember off the top of my head how many seniors they lost. Obviously, they brought in some a pretty decent freshman class. But you got to bring in some guys through the portal. I mean, that's the new era of college basketball. And it sounded like that was what Mississippi State was going to rely on and go all in on this year. And with all these departures, you wonder if it was a mutual thing. Talking about all of them. Was it an NIL thing? Was it just better opportunity somewhere? You never know. But you better find some replacements because this isn't good. This could get bad fast.
Yes, it could. I mean, we talked about them needing size from the beginning, and that was, Nwoko went in there and then lost another center as well, even though, he was, depth piece, but
Right.
that's still just a body that you could throw out there if you had to. And I mean, you're pretty much down to no centers at this point, really. And I
Right.
talked about how they needed shooting from the outside and to lose Myers and Kugel. I mean, you're scoring from the outside. I mean, the two things we said they needed with these guys on the roster.
Right.
They
Right.
need more now.
And they're saying Murphy's going to move back to power forward, which I think is good. But now you don't have any size, so you got to I think they're bringing in one center from the class. I'd have to go back and look exactly, but you got to get something in the portal now because you're not going to expect that freshman to start or do something for you next year either.
No, especially not at center. I mean, they're like if you have a scorer, that 6'5" shooting guard that go out there, yeah, he can probably go out there and still fill it up, but. Yeah, most freshman centers are not ready to bang down low like that.
No.
Luckily, there's a lot of very large men in the portal.
Yeah.
I looked through it today.
There are
probably at least 14 guys over 7 feet tall and over 230 pounds.
Right.
Just to get 1 or 2 of them.
And I'm sure more will enter. And, obviously the Final Four is still going on, so you don't know what players will leave from the teams that are still in it. So there's still a lot of things to shake out. It's not panic mode yet. But if you get to the point where a lot of your top targets are starting to get picked up, panic mode starts coming.
Yeah, it's not panic mode. Now it's just kind of looking around like what's going on here?
What are we doing? Yeah.
What's the plan? This many people enter. No one's coming out yet.
Right.
It's just an interesting situation to be in and not a fun one.
Absolutely. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. April is here, so be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Jaron, that's Landon. Check out our social media pages. Right there is our @ follow Locked On Mississippi State on Instagram, X, TikTok, YouTube. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends about us. If there's a topic you want us to talk about, comment on our video. We'll know when we will talk about it, and we'll dive in deep. But until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.